In 2014, Mrs. Akaran Aparo was 73 years old. She was on her way to Kakuma refugee camp when she spotted a dog. The dog had just given birth to 5 puppies. Miss Aparo remembered her 5 grandchildren she had left at home. They were starving. She remembered that she gets little food or no food at all when she goes to Kakuma. She also remembered that efforts to get help from the Republic of Kenya have been futile. She also knew that she would end up in jail if she stole a goat or a chicken to feed her family. She felt that she had no choice. She couldn't let her grandkids die, starve to death. So she looked at that dog that had laid 5 puppies, and she took 2 of them. She went home with them. She cooked them. Her grandchildren survived for another day. What was the worst thing that you have ever done to survive? Would you watch your grandkids die as you wait for Uhuru, as you wait for Ruto, as you wait for Raila, or as you wait for Nanok to help you? Welcome to Nahashon Kimemia Live. Josphat Nanok, the governor of Turkana County, you have failed the famine-stricken people of Turkana. Thank you to everyone who suggests topics for my videos. I appreciate it. Suggest a topic, comment below the video. Send me an inbox. Thank you to all my 1,196 subscribers. Please subscribe to my channel and do not hide a light where there is darkness. You can ask questions as I speak, or you can send me questions later. You can ask in the comment sections below. Let us get into it. The immediate nature of the problem. What is the problem? The 2018 short rains that occur in December were late and erratic in 2018. 40 days late in northern pastoral areas. But that wasn't enough. Nature had other plans. The rain ceased earlier than normal. And these occurrences, the late onset of the rains and the cessations of the rains earlier than normal, they have led to the situation that we have today. So what is this situation? There's a huge population requiring immediate food assistance. More specifically, that's 192,800 people in Turkana County. That's 18% of their population. Areas where people are facing a severe strain, they include water scarcity, the viability of their livestock, their health, and their security. It's problematic. And what specific challenges is the pastoralist facing? Most of the people who are in Turkana. There's dwindling pasture. The browsing areas are also dwindling. Water is scarce, and this is in the wet season grazing areas, the best areas. So what can they do? What our ancestors have always done? They will migrate into other areas. In this case, traditional dry season grazing areas. The areas where there is still some pasture, there's still some water. That's where they will go. But then when they go there, they will meet other people who have also come to that backup area. and there will be intercommunal resource-based conflicts. So that is the situation that they are facing. What situation are you facing in your life today? How does it compare to their situation? But it's not yet done. There are additional problems that these guys are facing. Their camels, they are facing a condition, a hemorrhagic specticemia. That's in camels. It's a highly fatal bacterial disease. And signs of the disease often progress. They move from dullness to fever to death, and that's within hours. So here you're facing starvation, your livestock is almost dying, and your camels, the ones that are supposed to be the most resilient, they have a disease, a highly fatal one that develops quickly. Few camels can be treated in time because it moves so quickly, and recovery for them is rare. So it's an attack on all sides. And even the sheep and the goat are not left behind. There is sheep and goat pox, which is another problem. Thank you, Peter Ngari, for watching. There was a tree locust invasion in Turkana West, Turkana North, and Kibish. The locust defoliated 20% of the browse and contributed to 5% of the loss of sorghum. I'm not sure how much sorghum they have there, but there was a loss. Focus on the browse. Those are the acacia trees, the shrubs. 20% of them decimated by locust alone. Now imagine the rest that are decimated by the lack of rainfall. These are the pressures that these guys are facing, and they are intense. And what is the governor saying about it? Well, this is what the governor said. It is at an alarm stage, the troubles in Turkana. And that he said in March 2019. Well, as at January 2019, Turkana was at an alert stage. That means people need to be alert because there is a problem that's most likely to come. And it came. What was the governor doing at that alert stage? What measures had he put in place at that time? Governor Nanok also says they have put aside 350 million for drought mitigation measures. His government has also put aside 150 million for emergency issues. I'm thinking this one is mostly to do with food. So how much is that? It's a lot. It's 450 million Kenya shillings. A lot of money, don't you think? But start dividing it into percentages. What percentage goes to the 42,000 food insecure people that were announced by the National Disaster Management Authority in February 2019? What percentage goes to water tracking to cover the increasing number of hotspots? What percentage goes to activate rapid response teams to fix borehole breakages? What goes to mitigation against escalation of resource-based conflicts? Handling livestock offtake, providing supplementary feed such as range keeps. What percentage goes to screen for malnutrition and minor ailments? What percentage goes to provide nutritional supplementation? What percentage goes to distribute water treatment chemicals like aqua tabs? When you divide this amount into its specific areas, you will realize that it's a drop in the bucket because there's so much to be done. And all of this was announced by February 2019. by NDMA, and Governor Nanok is speaking about them in March 2019. Where was he? Did he miss the bus? Because the train left a long time ago. From 2013 to 2017, Turkana County, it got 9.85 billion Kenya shillings on average in a year. In 2018, it got 10 billion. In 2019, it got 10.7 billion. Where does all this money go to? Why are there so many people starving if Turkana is receiving billions? 450 million out of a budget of roughly 10 billion, 4.5% of the county's budget, yet 18% of the population is facing starvation. Where is all this money going to? Why not go to 18% of your budget? Why not go to 10% of your budget? Is starvation not worth 10%? Where does all this money go to? And I'll ask this question. Have you seen Sonko's house? Have you seen Kidero's house? Have you seen Obado's house? Where does all our money go to? Governor Nanok says the situation keeps changing, and that is true. The climate outlook for the long range shows that it keeps changing. The long range are the ones that we are about to experience, right? Initially, the outlook indicated that most of Kenya was likely to experience slightly above average rainfall. That's except for parts of eastern Kenya and the coast. So things were to be good. The rains were to come. And that outlook said that the rains were expected to come in a timely fashion over several parts of Kenya. Like I think Western Kenya has had some showers as at now. But then something happened. The only thing that is constant: taxes, change, and death. So the change that occurred was tropical cyclone Idai, or Idai, don't know how to pronounce it, and it became a reality in recent days. It started developing from 4th March 2019 and it just ended on 16th March 2019. It is the worst cyclone to affect Africa in recorded history. So yes, it was a big deal. In fact, it's actually delaying the northward movement of the rain-bearing ITCZ. If you remember geography, ITCZ stands for Intertropical Convergence Zones, and it bears rain. And its movement from the south towards us is being delayed by this tropical cyclone. And the possibility exists for additional tropical cyclones in the southwest Indian Ocean basin. So more trouble could be coming. They say prevention is better than cure. I wonder if Nanok knows that. Things change. Prepare. So Governor Nanok says he is preparing. He is preparing for the rains. And he says that he has a team. They're making sure that the land is prepared and the seed distributed. So he's preparing for rain. But what rain is coming? The March, April, May 2019 seasonal rainfall onset was expected in March, as I've said, when it was due. But things changed. The cyclone in Mozambique. Sunny and dry weather conditions are likely to persist over most of the country because things have changed. More so the eastern sector of the country and the northwestern sector of the country. Turkana County, there is trouble. And the rainfall in Turkana County, northwestern counties including Turkana, the onset date for the rains will be 1st to 2nd April 2019. Again, this one would be more than 30 days late. Remember the long rains were 40 days late. The cessation dates in northwestern counties will be from 2nd to 3rd week of May 2019. Again, the long rains are supposed to end when May ends. These ones will end early. So what does that mean? That means that there will be a problem. And as much as we're preparing for these rains, which will not be as good as many people want, you need to be preparing for a disaster even more, so that you don't say it's a surprise. So Governor Nanok, he admits that the rains between March and May might fail. He says when he gets the report that the drought will persist, he will go to the budget, he will examine development expenditure and he will cut it. And he will use that to mitigate the drought. The question I'm asking, the report that I'm getting is from the Meteorological Department of Kenya. Does he not already have this report? How can I have it when he does not have it? And when it comes to cutting expenditure, why would we always go to development? Perhaps we could cut recurrent expenditure. But that's the trend of Africa. We have the reports, we never act on them. And then when we have to act on them, we punish the poor, limit the development, instead of limiting our expenditures, our travels, the number of offices, the number of cars that we have. And that is a failure. So anyway, in northwestern Kenya and other ASAL, poor rainfall performance is expected from the Meteorological Department. Problems related to water scarcity and lack of pasture for livestock are expected to increase. They are expected to increase following the poor rains observed during October, November, December last year, the short rains, right? And the ones that are going to occur during these long rains from April, May, March, April and May, because they are going to be poor. Human and wildlife and inter-community conflicts over limited resources are likely to increase. And the Meteorological Department, it ends with this statement: contingency plans and strategies should therefore be in place to avert such incidences. Remember, we have bulletins for January 2019, February 2019, March 2019, and we also have this warning from the Meteorological Department about what is going to happen. So why don't we have a more concrete plan when it comes to the movement of capital within Turkana County? Why don't we have a serious plan? Why do we seem to bank on rainfall when we already have reports that the rainfall might fail? So Governor Nanok says there's the water tracking in some areas. His government is doing that. He says that there's digging and repairing of boreholes. His government is doing that. And he says since last month, February, we began food distribution across the country. But the food stresses began before February. So he began late. The national government, according to the NDMA, has provided 1.35 billion for response to cover February, March, and April. That's in 12 counties. 1.3 billion. In one county alone, Nanok is getting 10 billion. Food and safety net, the amount that will be used for that is 601 million. Support to water tracking, maintenance and rehabilitation of boreholes, that's 150 million. That's the national government. From the NDMA, based on their reports, they say that what is the county government doing? What are they doing? They're doing general food distribution. And that's in Turkana, Garissa and Tana River. So these guys are not playing their part. They're just waiting for the national government to come in and do stuff for them. So why would we have county governments? This is an official report by NDMA, March 2019. It lists all the things that the national government is doing. The county government's general food distribution. Just giving your people food. Give a man a fish and you'll make him dependent for life. Teach a man how to fish. Perhaps they don't want to teach the people of Turkana how to fish. Because then, how would you convince independent people that they need you? Governor Nanok says, if the rains do not come, we are looking into our budgets in areas we can cut. He says that cutting these areas will help the county make more interventions if the rains fail to come by May. He asked the Ministry of Devolution to assist so as to increase food rations. So even the food distribution, you're still asking for help for that. And you have 10 billion in your budget. And you've allocated 4.5% to this problem. You might have allocated some in the past, but where did it go? What problem did it solve if we still have a problem today? It's a continuing trend, and that's why I want to look at the historical nature of this problem. And it starts all the way back before we became independent. At one point in history, the Turkanas were not as they were today. Just pictures of poverty and starving people. They were not that way. The high point in Turkana pastoralism was in around the 1880s. They were still few, but they occupied the same land area that they occupy today. In other words, they had plenty. The human numbers, the livestock numbers, the land area, it had reached its optimum size. And everybody seemed content. That was before the colonialists came and instituted something that they call government. And things changed. As their population increased, and as they faced the challenges, let's say droughts, they wanted to move outside their territories in search of fresh pastures. But this time, there was a government in place, a colonial government. And that government said, you're not going anywhere. Stay there. And attempts by the Turkana to gain access to additional dry season pastures, they were thwarted by the British. And the British sent punitive patrols against them. The Turkana tried. They organized an armed resistance against this foreign thing called government. And it plunged the region into a protracted and costly war of primary resistance. So all those who think about Mau Mau, who think about Mekatilili, or think about Oginga Odinga, you forget that among the first people to resist were the Turkana. and it was an armed resistance. So between 1916 and 1918, an estimated 250,000 livestock was confiscated from the Turkana. The British slaughtered many more livestock because the expeditions that came, the garrisons that came, they had to eat, and they would eat from the population. The government would eat from the population. By the end of 1918, the northern sections had nearly lost all their cattle. As you can see, these guys were doing well, these guys were rich, until that thing called government came into play. And as late as 1933, Turkana herders were still struggling to rebuild their former size. Look at Turkana today. Have they reclaimed their former size, their former glory? That might be a question, a good question for Nanok. So close to independence, that was pre-independence, close to independence, there was a report on famine relief in Kenya in 1962, just 1 year before independence. And it analyzed the Turkana people. It said they are a nomadic tribe and they depend on livestock for their livelihood. This was the government that had took their livestock, saying that they are dependent on livestock for their livelihood. They are supplemented by wild fruits, game, and birds, and a few earn their living by fishing along Lake Rudolph, named in honor of a crown prince of Austria, who was the first one to reach Lake Rudolph, I think the first European. Lake Rudolph is Lake Turkana as we know it today. So the total number of Turkana tribesmen at that time was approximately 100,000. Of them, 25,000 paid taxes. So even then, they were not in the government system, even though the government had taken so much from them. And their population was increasing. This guy says their population increased by 43% over 14 years. There was no corresponding increase in productivity or economic development according to the government, according to this report. And do you wonder why? After the government had treated them so unfairly, after they had tried so much to recover, so 60,000 head of cattle at that time. Remember, the British had taken 250,000. 140,000 sheep and goats, that's what they owned at that time, 1962. But no reliable count was carried out. So these were all guesswork. Because again, the Turkana was still not part of the government that had taken so much from them. The nomadic Turkana suffered badly during the 1961 to 1962 drought. That's according to a guy called Josphat. They lost 2/3 of their livestock. So they lost their livestock as the British came for them. They again lose their livestock in 1962 because of the drought. And they can't do what they historically do, moving out and finding new areas, because now there's a government telling them you must stay there. 30,000 Turkanas were rendered destitute, according to Josphat. They had to be fed by the government in famine relief camps. The 1962 report gives a different figure from Josphat. It says 6,500 people, mostly women and children and old persons, were in those 5 famine relief camps. The report says something that we all need to consider. The long-term answer to the Turkana problem does not lie in short-term relief projects. It lies in the education of its people. That is what the report says. It lies in their absorption into employment outside of their own district. In other words, as the Turkana faced problems, they moved outside of their traditional zones. This report is saying they need to move outside of their traditional zones. Who had kept them inside of those zones? Livestock was their primary source of livelihood. Who had taken their livestock? And now they're saying that they need to seek employment, which again comes with the government, which again needs education, so they can't use their traditional knowledge to get this employment. Do you see where it all started? The colonial government also said the initiation of long-term measures for agricultural rehabilitation was necessary, so they focused on agriculture. Fishing on Lake Rudolph, Lake Turkana, was another area of interest to the colonialists. They wanted to, that 1962 government, they wanted to teach people how to fish, and then they would buy that fish and distribute it to needy families in Turkana. A concept that we call livestock take-off today. But that was in the case of fish. The 1962 government advised for the improvement of crop and animal husbandry. They wanted to solve problems of surplus storage. Because when you store, there seems to be some problem. I wonder why, right? Because now we're storing maize in NCPPD, National Cereals and Produce Board, but there's a problem over there. Why? Assessment of unrestricted population growth vis-a-vis economic growth. So the 1962 government was focusing on the population of the Turkana. It was not focusing on the violence that it had meted against the Turkana. And it also advised the 1962 also advised that considerations needed to be made, because the reliance on Westerners, because I think the Americans had contributed £5.5 million for that relief effort in 1961, 1962. So they were saying that reliance was bad. And today, who are we relying on to bail us out? The report ended in this way, the 1962 report. One must hope that the lessons learned have been noted for the future. If by any great misfortune famine occurs again on a large scale, the administration of the day will reread our experiences and take action accordingly. So the guys who wrote that report, they wrote it for us to look at the experiences and to take action, so that we might never have famine on a scale that they had. Did we do that? After 1962, what happened? We got independence. Did you know that Turkana district was under a permanent cattle quarantine for 15 years, from 1963 to 1978? That's according to the writers of the 1979 to 1983 District Development Plan. Can you imagine what that would do to the economy of an entire people? That you have been introduced to this new concept of government, this new concept of a nation, but your primary source of wealth cannot be used to help you move further in that system, in that government, in that nation. For 15 years, your primary source of wealth is locked out. Even though you try to recover so much from the same government that took it away from you. Can you imagine what they did to the people of Turkana? And now they're asking you, you seek employment, you wear a suit and tie. But your primary source of wealth is livestock. That's how you've known for ages, for centuries. But now you must conform to the system of those who devastated you, and of those who do not accept your economic way to help you move ahead in that new way. So anyway, that's just a point. 1971 to 1974, there was a drought. Did we listen to the guys who spoke in 1962 that we remember the experiences? We did not. In 1979 to 1980, we had another drought. This time it affected the Turkana and the Kambas around Kitui. The national food reserves had been drained seriously. And in 1962, they had spoken about, being careful about Western dependence, about being careful about how we store our food. But did we listen? So we had to import food again. We imported from the European Economic Community, today known as the European Union. We imported from the United States of America. We did not listen. We did not reread. We did not go back to to see the experiences so that we can learn from them. And even in 1979, right, 1980, after that famine, they advised, they said, famine relief food supplies are just a stopgap measure. The intention was to keep the victims alive, just alive. Are we here to live or to survive? The big question was how the Turkana are going to adjust to drought and famine conditions. How are we going to help them sustain their economy, sustain themselves? Again, that was a question in 1962. But again, it's another question. It's a question in 1980. And in 2014, that's the story that I began with, about the puppy. So 2014, we have another drought. In 2017, there's another drought. An estimated 30,000 households have moved across the border from Turkana County into Uganda. 114,000 children enrolled in 930 schools in 13 counties are not attending school at this time in 2017. Remember, in 1962, they said that education was the key. But in 2017, kids are not going to school. So have we learned? Where are we going as a nation? Let's go to the climatic nature of the problem. Did you know that the Sahara Desert is the largest hot desert in the world? It is the third largest desert overall, after Antarctica, which is a cold desert, and after the Arctic, which is a cold desert. Its size is so big that you can compare it to the area of China that has 1.2 billion people, or to the United States that has 330 or 300 million people. It is that big. We can fit them into the Sahara. Did you know that since 1900, the Sahara has expanded by 250 kilometers to the south. It has expanded over a stretch of land from east to west by 6,000 kilometers long. In other words, it is expanding. But did you also know that we are in a dry period? That the Sahara will become green once again in 17,000 AD. Did you know that? Did you also know that there is a region called the Sahel? It's a transition area between the Sahara Desert and the savanna areas in the south, in southern Africa. Yes, sub-Saharan Africa. At least 50% of the 10 million cattle in this region perished before 1968. And they perished why? Because there is an expansion, there is a desertification, there was a great famine in the Sahel, and thousands died, and their cattle went with them. Lake Turkana is on the upper part, was at one time in history on the upper part of the Nile system thousands of years ago. It was connected to Lake Baringo at the southern end and the White Nile in the north. Can you imagine? And that is why we have crocodiles and the Nile perch in Lake Turkana, because they came from the Nile. It was one big wet area. But today, 81% of Kenya's land area is ASAL, arid or semi-arid. The current famine right now is affecting 12 counties in Kenya, aside from Turkana. Some of them include Isiolo, Garissa, Wajir, Kilifi, Baringo, Marsabit. What am I trying to say? Speaking about the Sahara, speaking about the Sahel, speaking about Lake Turkana, and speaking about the other 12 counties aside from Turkana. This is what I'm trying to say. That this problem is not going away. It hasn't gone away since the 1960s, and it will not go away. And right now we're in 2017. We can find a permanent way of dealing with this problem, or we can wait for thousands of years, 15,000 years, until 17,000 AD, when the Sahara will be green again. And then this problem will go away naturally. We can give food donations until then, or we can handle it. Because the suggestions, the recommendations are there. They have been there since 1962. The problems that led into this starvation, they are there. And it started with government. It started with one central government. And that is why there is the political and economic nature of this problem. Just to put it simplistically, in Turkana County, people have livestock. In Uasin Gishu County, people have maize. So what is the problem? Why don't these people give away their livestock and these people give away their maize? What is the problem? The problem is the same problem that has been there since the beginning. Central government. That somebody comes in between and says, you know what, let me keep that maize for you. You don't have to store it. I will store it for you. And somebody says, come, sell me your livestock. And I will sell it for you. So we have maize that is rotting. We have maize farmers not being paid. We have maize importation. And in the same country, we have people dying of hunger. People who have livestock dying of hunger. So Eugene Wamalwa visited the region just some time back, I think a week ago or something. He distributed 7,000 bags of maize. The country has an estimated 4 million bags of maize. Eugene came with 7,000. Eugene said that the government will focus on irrigation for sustainability. And it seems like a good idea. So let's look at the examples of irrigation successes in Kenya. Let's go to the most recent one. How did Galana Kalulu work out for the poor? 7.5 billion lost. How much food could it buy for the people of Turkana? The 192 people who are facing starvation. If 1.3 billion is enough from the central government for 3 months for 12 counties, imagine what 7 billion could have done. Eugene says that ASAL areas can store water in dams when it rains, and then they can use that water to irrigate farms. So how did the Aror and Kim Warer dam scandals work out for the poor? I'll tell you how it worked out. 21 billion lost. How much food could it have bought for the people of Turkana? Central government. And right now there's a tussle between the county government of Turkana and the national government of Turkana, of Kenya. Each one of them wants to spend the least amount on feeding the poor in Turkana. And eventually the poor will lose, as they have always lost from the beginning. Remember that there is an increase in the number of food insecure people in the country. It moved from 655,000, right, or 656,000 in August 2018 to 1.1 million today. Increase. Top 12 counties have a total of 865,000 food insecure people. And we had early warning systems, we had reports, and we had distributions to the counties, and we have food reserves, strategic food reserves. The Turkana, they have livestock, so why are people dying? The government is not our friend. Remember that the government says that it will only step in when counties are overwhelmed. That's on one hand, that's what Eugene is saying. Nanok is asking for more support from the government, even though he has only set aside 4.5% of his budget. He fails to realize that the national government is the problem, and that is why we went for a devolved system. When an entity is the problem, it cannot be the solution. So Nanok, with the little that you have, do something with it. The problem historically with the people of Turkana has been hunger. What development project are you carrying out if it is not directly connected to ending hunger in Turkana? If you build roads, who will walk on those roads? Who will drive on those roads? Won't it be people from other counties? When in essence, from the very beginning, the salvation of the Turkana lied in moving outside of their county into other areas. Back then, the British thought that fish was your only solution. Now you have oil. And you fought for increased distribution. What is that distribution doing if people are still starving? They are the benefits of farming. Remember the sugar fiasco. As they're selling us bad sugar, somebody is benefiting from that sale. As people are dying in Turkana, somebody is benefiting. One man's meat is another man's poison. Counties can spend on emergency situations without going through much scrutiny. And what does that mean? There's a relaxation of authorization procedures. There's a relaxation of procurement procedures. Because the law allows for the funds to be used fast and reports to come later. And it actually makes sense. Because if somebody is starving, you won't focus on the procedures, you'll focus on getting the money to those guys. And then the reports will come later. But does the money get to them? That is the question. Remember the El Nino Fund in Nairobi. Where did the money go? If another El Nino comes today, we will still need another fund. NGOs benefit as well from additional funding for emergencies. Anytime they get more pictures for PowerPoint presentations, it justifies their call for long-term funding and for additional funding at that time. Activists get reason to demonstrate against the government as they build themselves for political careers. What am I saying? I am saying, like Nelson Mandela said, poverty is not an accident. Everything being done, everybody who is suffering, it's a matter of design. It is all a conspiracy against the poor. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you think. Leave your comments in the comment section below the video. Thank you to all my 1,196 subscribers. Please subscribe to my channel and share these videos. Do not hide a light where there is darkness. Pray for me that I may not flee for fear of the wolves.